Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing the new Grudge film that came out earlier this year and is directed by Nicholas Persay and stars Andrea Roseborough, Damien Bashar and John Cho, among others. This film is a continuation of the Grudge story, and it focuses once again on a house that is cursed by a vengeful spirit that dooms those who enter it with a violent death. The film opens up in 2004, which sort of takes place about around the same time as the Sarah Michelle Gellar remake that came out in 2004. And it follows this young woman who ends up going back home to be with her husband and her daughter. But unbeknownst to her, she's actually brought something back with her, an evil spirit that sort of condemns this house to a lot of violence. Then it skips to present day within the film, which I think is 2006 or 2008. And we're introduced to Detective Muldoon, played by Andrea Roseborough. She's a police detective, a single mother due to the death of her partner only a few months earlier. And she moves with her young son to a new town, Damien Bashard's Detective Goodman's partner. What propels this film forward is ultimately they get a call about an abandoned car and a dead woman inside. And the death of this woman sort of relates to a case that happened in 2004. That we don't really know a lot about to begin with. And this starts Detective Muldoon's obsession with finding out what happened in that house and why. And she unwillingly steps inside, and as everybody knows with the Grudge film, once you step inside, ultimately begin to see the darkness and are pursued constantly by these vengeful spirits. It's really about her trying to work out what's going on. And through the case files she reads, we see flashbacks of particular people who inhabited the house, such as the young woman who came back from Tokyo and ultimately her daughter and her husband were all killed. And it also looks at John Cho and his character and his wife, who are real estate agents for the house. But once he steps inside, it causes all sorts of mayhem to happen. And it also looks at the woman who died in the car that they found, this abandoned car in the middle of the forest that happened months earlier. We work out who she is, and then we're introduced to Lin Shaye's character. Sort of a crazy sort of lady, I guess, in many ways, but is aware of the spirits within the house. And it's really about Muldoon trying to work out what's going on and what sort of happened and what has transpired. She starts listening to tapes of Goodman's previous partner, who's locked up in a mental institution, who got wind of the case but kept seeing these things and ultimately shoots himself but doesn't die. And he ends up in this mental institution where she goes to see him. And we sort of hear his tapes and his take on the particular things that happen as well. It all leads to quite a surprising and refreshingly interesting ending, I think, in many ways. Look, going in, I'm not a big fan of the director at all. Like his previous film, Piercing, I didn't really overly love. There were some good ideas in it, I just didn't like the execution of it. And this film really suffers from that as well. I didn't like the way that was executed at all. There were aspects I liked to it. Look, I'll start with the positives. The first 20 minutes, in my opinion, I enjoy. It sets up this darkness, it sets up the characters, it sets up what is going to happen as the film unfolds and we learn more about these particular cases we don't know anything about at the beginning. And that aspect I really liked. Andrea Roseborough, I think, is fantastic in this. She's an actress I really love. No matter what she's put into, no matter whether the film's good or bad, her performance is always really good and solid, and she's really fantastic here. I've been a big fan of her for a number of years, ever since Birdman, but really it was Mandy that she did with Nicolas Cage that I really loved her in and become a huge fan. So to see her in this playing detective that's sort of haunted and trying to be a single mother and is, it's just all really well executed, and I really like her performance here. Damien Bashar, I think, is solid. I like his performance as well. He's an actor I've sort of liked since The Bridge, and I think The Bridge is probably his best work. But I do like him as an actor, and I think he's solid in this. There's some creepy and scary moments in this I sort of liked. They were trying to do something a little different with the scares than a lot of the other horror films. And with the Grudge series, it's something that needs to be more creepy than jump scares, I think, in a lot of ways. And there are some great moments with this where it isn't jump scares, where at the beginning of the film, the young woman who's leaving Tokyo, she's standing at the front of the house and there's all these garbage bags there waiting to be collected. And this hand reaches out of the bag and grabs a leg, and one of them, the bags, breathes. I really loved that. I thought that was a really great moment. There are jump scares throughout the film, which I don't know if they really work really well. And there's things that don't quite make sense with the way that these particular ghosts and and vengeful spirits actually work. More like a zombie sort of thing than an actual similar thing to the usual Grudge look, I guess. I like the look and feel, but that's really all I really liked about it. I just found this film a bit convoluted, a bit confusing, and it sort of took you out of things so quickly that you didn't really have time to connect. Like I said, the first 20 minutes I liked, and I really liked the introduction of Detective Muldoon, but it just, from those 20 minutes on, when she starts to read the cases of what happened in this particular house, we sort of dive into who these characters are, and we have this whole sequence and scenes of explaining who they are, which she wouldn't have the information for, and it just felt jarring. Like, it's introducing her. I think they could have kept it more simple and her following this, and then we see flashbacks in certain areas, rather than just completely going back and showing what they did. And then there's just too many stories going on at once. And I know they all connect together in the smallest of ways, but they're just jarring because you go from one to the next, and then it skips randomly. I just felt this away from the story in the film, and I just didn't feel engaged with it at all. A lot of times with horror films, there's two things that happen. They either spend too much time with the horror and you don't really get a sense of the character. When they start dying, you don't really care. Or they spend too much time with the characters that the horror is minimal. And this film suffers from the latter. It's more about creating emotional ties and creating characters, which isn't bad. You need that for this type of film. But they spend too much time on that. And then the horror elements are just small and minute, and sometimes they're quite graphic or violent, and I just don't think he got the balance quite right. I did see in the special features he talked about there's these Easter eggs. He made a lot of references to the original film, 2004 remake, and video games and comics and stuff. He made so many references to all the Grudge franchise that I think he got a bit weighed down and lost in it. He was trying to be too clever. Look what I can do. Look what I've introduced. For those people who are fans of the Grudge, there are this scene and that scene. This is from a comic book, and this is from a game, and this is from the other movies. And I'm just like, he spent too much time doing that his film suffered, in my opinion. He didn't spend enough time crafting his own thing. He was just trying to explain everything. He was trying to introduce all the franchise, all the ideas, and all the memorabilia and stuff that come from The Grudge into one film. And I felt that was a waste. That could have been an interesting film. And the fact that Sam Raimi produced it sort of saddened me even more, because it just wasn't the type of film he would usually produce or do. And I was very disappointed. Was weighed down in particular areas. It felt a little boring in parts. Some of the story didn't quite make sense and how it sort of worked. Like, they never explain how this vengeful spirit can attach itself to a person and go to America. You know, it's never really looked at that. It's looked at, you know, this violent thing that happens in the house, and each person who goes in the house is haunted by these things. But I just didn't really buy it connecting to America in any way. I just think they should have kept it in Tokyo like they had originally, or done something different. He didn't have to call it The Grudge. He could have done something completely different. And overall, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, even though I did enjoy the first 20 minutes. Final thoughts. This is a great example of a director getting too weighed down by previous films in a franchise and not crafting his own thing. There are elements through it that are unique and different, but most of it is just trying to be a reference to the other Grudge film. As a continuation to the Grudge franchise, this is very disappointing. I'm going to give The Grudge 2020 1.5 out of 5. Even though I liked the first 20 minutes and I enjoyed Andrea Riseborough's performance and character, I just felt this film was lacking, and I was very disappointed in it. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.